Hi students, welcome back to this channel English Literature with Idam. In this video, I am going to discuss on the very fascinating topic, and that is the posthumanism. Earlier in two videos, I discussed about the various concepts and definitions of the posthumanism, and I aligned the posthumanism with the post-structuralism as well as the postmodernism. In those all videos, I gave the general introduction and also the boundary lines between the various different theories in contemporary literary scholarship. In one of the video, I also discussed about the various famous theorists and philosophers of the posthumanism, and I showed that how the various different philosophers and the posthuman theorists critique the very idea and the notion of the human centrality, and they also reposition the human in the contemporary society, nature, environment, and the biology. In this today's lecture, I would be discussing some of the core strengths and the weaknesses of the posthuman theory. As if you are new, you might be unknown to the fact that the posthumanism actually challenges the anthropocentric stance. So during the Renaissance of humanism and enlightenment, we see the different philosophers like Rene Descartes and John Locke who give the rationality, empathy, human feelings and emotions as the unique characteristic and feature in the human subjectivity. And due to these all features, human stands unique, superior, powerful, and central in the society. So this way, this very idea of human centrality gives birth to various discriminations and disparities in the society, which I have discussed in the previous all lectures. Today, I would show that how the posthumanism critiques the very idea of anthropocentric stance and how it aligns the human with the contemporary system, and that system is system of the networks of technology, biology, humans, and animals. And I would show that despite being a revolutionary critical stance and revolutionary theoretical perspective, the posthumanism appears as somewhere weak and drawback in the literary scholarship. So without wasting our time, let us begin. As I mentioned earlier, that posthumanism critiques the anthropocentrism. So Gary Wolf, in the famous work, What is Posthumanism, privileges humans over other life forms because human is empathic, humans' empathy, feelings, emotions stand him above all other life forms. And Mary Shelley, in the famous novel Frankenstein, published in 1818, challenges the very boundary between the human and the non-human through the creature. So through the technology and the innovation, Frankenstein creates a monster which is part human and part machine. So this new creation, a creature, actually challenges and destroys the boundaries between what defines the human as human and what defines the non-human as non-human. And there we see that the monster is human and the machine at the same time. So the traditional understanding of human as only the biological human is challenged, particularly in this famous novel Frankenstein. At the same time, when we challenge the traditional understanding of the human, and when the human agency is challenged and human and non-human boundaries are blurred, there is the risk of weakening the human agency. Various contemporary critics argue that posthuman theory sometimes dissolves the idea of human autonomy by emphasizing networks and the systems. And this idea of dissolving the boundaries and the subjectivities of the human autonomy raise concerns about the responsibility in the technological society. It raises the question of responsibility, that what counts as human, what counts as machine. Again, Donna Haraway, in the famous work Cyborg Manifesto, published in 1985, proposes the cyborg as a metaphor for hybrid identities beyond rigid boundaries of the human and the machine. The Haraway's cyborg creature is the creature of machines and the biology at the same time. So it is a hybrid creature. It is hybrid in nature, and it goes beyond the rigid boundaries of the humans and the machines. As the word itself says, the cyber for the cybernetic, and org for the organism. So Donna Haraway gives the metaphor of cyborg for a creature which is not completely human, which is not completely machine, but which is the blend of the two different entities. And Philip K. Dick, in the famous novel Do and Ride's Dream of Electric Sheep, creates a robots who work like the human being, who decide like the human being, and who think like the human being. Through the actions, they appear as the human being, but through the body, they appear as only the machine. So this way, this cyborgian metaphor challenges the rigid boundaries between the machines and the human being, the biology and the technology. And when we create or appear as a cyborg identities, there is a risk of technological determinism. Various critics argue that the post-human theory assumes technology inevitably shapes the human identity. And when the cyborgian identity or cyborgian subjectivity is influenced and shaped by technology, it risks the humans our reliance on that technology and on the assumptions that technology is the only factor which creates, shapes, and designs the human identity. E.M. Foster's The Machine Stops also warns against the over and excessive dependence and determinism of the technology. Foster says that being over reliant and dependent on the technology may risk the human losing its biological autonomy, biological subjectivity. So the next is the understanding digital and the cybernetic culture. And Catherine Hills, in How We Become a Posthuman, analyzes how the cybernetic reshaped ideas of the body and the information. And Catherine Hill is the one also who talks about the artificial intelligence, the smart apps or the smartphones, and also the smart ideas, technological ideas in the contemporary society. And she is the first who says that if we see the technological embodiment or the human artificial intelligence embodiment, it directly targets the human autonomy and the human understanding. And she says that in How We Become Post-Human, she says that we are not more human, but we are the human and the machines at the same time. Our cognition has taken the influence of the technology, of the artificial intelligence. And in William Gibson's Neuromancer, for example, we see that our consciousness interacts with the cyberspace. And Catherine Hills is the base and the how foundation of the study on how our consciousness interacts with the cyberspace. For example, the, the human embodiment where the human's characteristics are given to the technology. For example, human can think, human can decide, human can feel. So these are the defining characteristics of the human being. But what if technology does all these things? If even in the contemporary society, we see that artificial intelligence does all these things. ChatGPT can think like the human being. Robots can think and act like the human being. So this ultimately challenges the idea of the human being, human biology. And while we think that technology can work, act, and decide like the human being, it shows a risk on the our faces of the future technologies, because our future is going to be boomed with the artificial intelligence, boomed with the technology. So it shows a risk that often focusing on the futuristic possibilities like artificial intelligence, genetic enhancement can ignore our current social inequalities. When we believe that artificial intelligence, the technology, robots can change the society, can change the future course of action, can change the future standard of life, then first it shows the our emphasis on the future technologies, and second, it directly ignores the current social inequality, because the technology is going to be the possession of the capitalists. It's going to be the wealth of the elite class. It is going to be the tool in the hand of the capitalists, the scientists, the patriarchs, and the corporates. So various theorists and critics show this concern over the social inequalities which are in the contemporary society on the basis of economics, the culture, the geography, the region, races, and this these inequalities can be reinforced with the help of artificial intelligence or the genetic enhancement in the future as well. The next we have interdisciplinary framework. As Rosie Broidati in The Post-Human integrates philosophy, ecology, feminism, and the science studies. Rosie Broidati integrates the philosophy, environment, and the women studies as well as the science studies. And she says that this posthumanism actually integrates all these philosophical standpoints in it. Posthumanism is not built in the vacuum, but it shares the boundaries and the networks with the philosophy, environment, ecosystem, female studies, and the science studies. And it believes that the human is integrated or correlated with all the other domains of life, domains of society. For example, Margaret Atwood in Oryx and Crake combines the biotechnology, environment, and the dystopian fiction. And she doesn't only talks about the biotechnology, the human enhancement, or the transhumanism, but rather she combines the biotechnology, environment, and dystopian fiction and creates an interdisciplinary outlook where cracks are the humans, they are the environmental factors, the components, and they are the biotechnologies as well. And when somebody becomes multiple things at once or at the same time, it shows a risk of being the theoretical complexity or the human complexity, because various post-human texts often use highly abstract language, which makes it difficult for journal readers or students unfamiliar with the philosophy. When somebody says that we are cyborgs, we are the ecologies, we are the machines, we are the humans, we are the biotechnologies, it becomes complicated and the complex, and it becomes difficult to understand the core crux and the core ideas of the posthumanism. The next, we have the expansion of ethical boundaries. As Carrie Wolf critiques the posthumanism and aligns it with the animal studies. And when Carrie Wolf aligns the posthumanism with the animal studies, he extends it beyond the humans and the animals and extends the ethics of the humanity. For example, when Carrie Wolf says that humans are not superior because of the feelings and the emotions or the empathy or the rationality or the intellectuality, because all these things are in the animals as well. And when human, traditional human considers itself only the rational, dominated, dominated persona or the person or individual, then it becomes quite unethical towards the non-humans or inhumans. And Carrie Wolf says that every human being, every non-human being has the fundamental rights. Everything has the agency, everything has the power, identity, and we human can't exploit or misuse or overuse the non-humans like animals, like trees. And Carrie Wolf says that we need to set some boundaries, we need to set some ethics, we need to have the ethical studies, ethical rules in the society for the animals as well. And he's the one who talks about the animal rights, animal movements. For example, J.M. Coetzee writes The Lives of the Animal, which critiques the human's exploitation of the animals. And J.M. Coetzee says that the animals also deserve to live respectfully. They also they also deserve to live and lead the life with dignity and with values. So Carrie Wolf then becomes the predecessor of the James Coates' The Life of Animals philosophy. But when we talk about the human and animals rules, human and animal fundamental rights, it automatically shows the ethical ambiguity. Because if killing the animals is inhuman, if the killing the animals is unethical, then how can the human can survive on the earth? If if fishing is unethical, if fishing is beyond the ethics, then how can a human being survive in the society on this earth? For the sake of survival, human has to kill somebody. Human has to kill somebody in order to live. So it terrible shows the ethical ambiguity as well. And by blurring the distinctions between the human and non-human, post-human sometimes creates uncertainty about the moral boundaries. It says that if we judge everything on the parameters of ethics and the morals, then human can't live a respectful and the peaceful life. And even when we take the oxygen, when we are alive, take the oxygen, we inhale so many organisms, non-human entities in ourselves. So we live by killing various non-human entities, the individuals. And posthuman sometimes shows this ambiguity. It doesn't clear the boundary between the ethical, what is ethical and what is non-ethical, what is moral and what is immoral. Next, we have the reimagining human identities. As Michel Foucault predicts the death of man, and when Michel Foucault predicts the death of man, he even destroys the stable categories of the human identity. For example, in Order of Things, Michel Foucault says that human is killed and then the non-human comes. So for killing of the human is not literal, it is symbolical, it is figurative. So he says that the traditional central place of human is no more. And it shows the death of the human centrality, the human central position, the human central subjectivity. And Kazuo Ishiguro, in the famous novel Never Let Me Go, challenges the human subjectivity where he creates the cloned bodies. And those cloned bodies are actually made as the substitute, as the alternative of the human being. Those cloned bodies as the humans are created in order to supply and donate their organs to the human being, other to the animals. And this idea shows the human subjectivity where a human can be used for the animal's life, where the animal can be used for the human's life. For example, when human limbs are used in the animals, are the animal's limbs used in the human body. And baboons are particularly used in the human body. The baboon's limbs are used in the human body. So that shows the unstable categories of the human subjectivity of the human body. And Michel Foucault has particularly predicted this idea of the death of the humanity in the Order of Things. When the humans and the animals' identities and the bodies are superseded, it shows that some kind of risk of the dehumanization. It shows the risk of the dehumanization, and various critiques argue that reducing humans to biological or the informational systems may devalue the human dignity and the human individuality. Critics argue that when the human and the animals identities and the bodies are replaced or interchanged, it risks devaluing the human identity and the human biological individuality. And traditionally, human was the human because it is biological. It has the rational capacity. It has the sixth sense. It has various privileges and the features in the body. Whereas animals lack all these things. But posthumanism says that both the humans and the non-humans have the thinking capacity, they have the emotions, feelings, they both are empathetic. And when human and the animals are taken together or put in the same category, it risks the dehumanization. It risks the devaluing the human dignity and the individuality. So the next is that we usually align the posthumanism with the ecology and the ecosystem, emphasizing the human interconnectedness with the environment and the nature. As earlier I told you that humanism is the human centric, where the technology, nature, ecosystem is excluded or kept at the place of periphery. But posthumanism aligns the human, connects the human with the nature, and it unexplores or discloses the intricate relationships between the humans and the nature. For example, Jeff Vandermeer's annihilation explores the human environment entanglement. Just believe that human and the nature, they both are interconnected. Because when there is the rain or there is the winter, we wear the warm clothes. So then wearing the warm cloth is not our choice. It is imposed on us by the nature. So it means that we are deeply entangled with the nature, which is not visible to the naked eyes, but upon critically investigation, we can see that relationship and the link. Whereas the environmental awareness or the post-human connection with the environment has some limited global perspective. For example, critics argue that post-human debates often reflect concerns of technologically advanced societies rather than the realities of developing regions. So it says that although the post-human aligns the human with the nature and the environment, but it is more concerned and aligned and interrelated with the technology rather than the environment. So this is some kind of limited perspective, which some critics argue. The next is the critique of human exceptionalism. As Bruno Lota's actor network theory threat treats the humans and non-humans as actor within networks. Earlier, as per the humanism, humans were isolated, they were separate, they were unique. But posthumanism says that humans are not isolated or unique, but they are the network. They are the part of this whole network, this whole chain. And everybody acts in the similar way. Everybody acts in some specific way to work or to work and keep the balance in the environment. For example, it's a kind of chain. So one breaking of one part of chain can disturb the whole process, the whole chain. So Bruno Latour says that human, environment, animals, trees, plants, stones, everybody is just a network. Everybody is like a, a part of the whole process, the whole network of the chain. And it treats the humans and the non-humans as actors within network. So there, as per Bruno Latour, the humans and the non-humans are equal. They are sharing some same features, some same qualities. So they are like networks. There is no human exceptionalism. That human is not treated as exceptional, superior, different, isolated, but it is deeply integrated, chained with the whole network. And Richard Powers, our story highlights the human dependence on the ecological system. For example, we are completely dependent on the ecosystem. We are getting the oxygen, we are getting the meal, we are getting the fruits, we are getting our daily lifestyle, the cultures from the nature. And this spaceship theory actually advocates and forwards this whole idea of the human dependence on the ecological system. So, which we will definitely discuss on any other day. Whereas talking about the human exceptionalism threats the neglect of political economy. As some Marxist critics argue that post-human theory pays insufficient attention to the capitalism, labor, and the economic inequality. Because the economic process, the labor and the capitalism is associated and linked with the humanity only, not with the nature, not with the animals. So it shows that having focus on the human and the nature interconnection actually creates a kind of ambiguity, because everything has its own agency, everything has its own power, and human money is linked and associated with the humans. Capitalism and labor and economic opportunities are linked and associated with the humans, not with the animals. So these are the needs of the human. But when we give the similar traits are the same qualities and the features the to the humans and the non-humans, and we treat them as the equal networks, then we are somewhat neglecting the political economy, and we are also minimizing and neglecting the Marxist critics of the socioeconomic conditions. Next, we have the innovative literary criticism. As posthumanism allows scholars to reinterpret science fiction, speculative fiction, and the dystopian literature, as posthumanism gives us the new ways to criticize the works. And there are subsets of the fictions, like science fiction, speculative fiction, dystopian fiction. For example, H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau explores the hybrid beings and the scientific experiments. Posthumanism actually deals with the fictions in very different way. For example, if there is any hard science fiction is the fiction which criticizes the experiments, innovations, other scientific discoveries, whereas the soft science fiction talks only about the human actions, the scientific experimental effects on the human society. And it somewhat gives a theoretical and descriptive understanding of the science and the technology. So this way, the posthumanism innovates the literary criticism. Whereas technological utopianism also appear as somewhat a weak point, because various thinkers appear overly optimistic about the technological progress. And this is a weak point when we say that or consider that technology is only a solution to the contemporary social problems. When we think that technology is only a gateway towards the peace, towards the prosperity, and towards the equality, it's a kind of it's a kind of utopianism which is full of dystopia. There is a risk and the threat of the utopian dystopian. So technology is not always the boon, but it can be bane as well. As I shared a video on whether the technology is bane or boon for the humanity. So you can go through that video. You would find that how the technology has the double standard, the two different dimensions and aspects. So posthumanism believes that technology is only a way to deal with the gender problem which the xenofeminism talks about. And it believes that the technology is going to spread the peace, to spread the equality, and to make the human livelihood more better. This can be a wrong assumption as well. The next is engagement with the artificial intelligence and the biotechnology. As post-human theory helps to analyze emerging technological realities such as artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, as posthumanism links itself with the technological realities and possibilities like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, biotechnological techniques, and which Margaret Atwood has criticized in the famous Oryx and Crake trilogy, and which Catherine Hale also talks about in what it means to be post-human. Ian McAvan's The Machines Like Me examines the human artificial intelligence relationship. So this novel, Machines Like Me, in highlights the human and artificial intelligence relationship, and we can see this relationship with the theoretical perspective of the Catherine Hales. Whereas when we engage the human with artificial intelligence and biotechnology, the first important and major concern is the blurring of the conceptual boundaries or the imaginative boundaries. As the term post-human itself is sometimes used inconsistently across fields, it creates the conceptual confusion between the post-humanism and the transhumanism. And there is the ambiguity, there is the complexity between the blurring of the conceptual boundaries. That what is the post-human and what is the transhumanism. I may come with this topic also, that what is the difference between the transhumanism and the posthumanism. Though they appear same, but they are a bit different. As posthumanism is highly philosophical, but the transhumanism is practical. Posthumanism talks about the uses of the technology on the human body, whereas the transhumanism actually uses practically technology on the human body. Think of the artificial limbs, think of the prosthetic leg and arms, think of the heart transplantation, think of the tattoos on the human body. So these boundaries between the philosophical and empirical boundaries between the posthuman and transhumanism are conceptually blurred. So without taking it so deep, let us conclude this whole video that post-human theory represents a significant shift in contemporary thoughts by challenging the traditional assumptions about the human identity and the relationship between the humans, technology, and the nature. And its strength lies in its ability to criticize the anthropocentrism, which believes that human is at the center of the universe, and the human is the superior and the most powerful. Human is exceptional and isolated. It also analyzes the technological transformation and its impact on the human society and the human identity. It also talks about the ethical perspectives. It provides the innovative framework for literary interpretations. However, despite being a strong foundational, a strong theoretical perspective, it also risks the loss of human agency or the human autonomy. It also risks completely being the optimistic about the technological determinism, because technology is boon and the bane as well. It also creates a kind of abstraction or the complexity or the ambiguity, and it also neglects of the social and economic reality, because as I mentioned earlier that capitalism, money, resources, monetary resources are the need of the human only, not the animals, not the plants and the trees. So this way, when we talk about when we align human with the nature, we are completely neglecting the social and economic reality, which is a weak point of the posthumanism. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and hoping to meet you with another amazing topic. Thank you.